Hey everybody, welcome back to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com and LearningToMix.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And this time, this is kind of a last minute thought video here. I was in the middle of, or I am in the middle of recording the content for our January 2018 Learning to Mix mix. And in that I was working on some bass guitars, and I had a little tangent on using reference tracks and so on and so forth. And I thought, this would be a great learning opportunity for people on my YouTube channel as well. I get asked a lot about people who might be interested in LearningToMix.com. Well, what is LearningToMix.com? What makes it different from other mixing membership training websites? What kind of instruction do I get? Yada, yada, yada. And this is a great example. So what we're going to do here in a second, so I'm going to cut away and you're going to see an actual section of the content for LearningToMix.com for January 2018 is my contribution as 50% of the content. Pete Woj from MixBetterNow.com obviously does his mix as well. And if you, at the end of this video, if you like this style of teaching and you see that we dive way down deep and really get into the fundamentals of things, and I just don't throw a bunch of plugins on, turn a bunch of knobs and go, here's what I did. I really try to break things down and teach you when these kinds of things come up. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, after you watch the video clip, head on over to LearningToMix.com and sign up today. You get a 30-day money-back guarantee, and this kind of stuff you're about to see is the same kind of stuff that you see every single month from me and from my colleague Pete Woj, and we're really trying to teach the fundamentals of mixing regardless of what experience level you might be at. So this month we're happen to be doing a hip-hop rap track, but we do all different styles of music, everything from country to blues to rock to metal to rap, big bands, jazz, and everything in between. So you're going to get experience in all different genres of music at LearningToMix.com. So check out this 5 or 8 minute clip here, as you can see how I'm showing my students how to kind of work with this bass guitar and compare it to a reference track, and we get down deep in it, and hopefully you'll learn something. If you have any questions below, leave a comment below and I'll be happy to answer them. And I hope to see all of you over at LearningToMix.com. Take care. Okay, now that we kind of got that dialed in, let's go back to our reference track and let's just take a listen to this hieroglyphics song here, and let's just see from a bass, kick bass, drum kit bass scenario, where are we? Now again, we're listening to a master track. We'll compare it to ours.
Before you even know it was a business. I mean, bluffing. For sure, Machiavelli
Just looking. Sorry about that. I was just looking for a section of the reference track that doesn't have any vocals to distract us. So we're listening to kick, bass, drum, bass kind of combination. Try to block out when you're listening to the reference track the other instrumentation going around it. Now again, using reference tracks, there's all kinds of debate around, how closely do you try to match things? We're not trying to match exactly, we're just trying to get in the ballpark. And again, as I said in the earlier sections, because we're not familiar with this style of music, we want to be competitive, so we want that kick snare and the bass to kind of live in the same neighborhood, volume-wise, in relation to each other, tonality-wise, as a reference track or two. And again, if you're doing this for like a client, I would suggest you get several reference tracks from different artists. Or if it was a client, you would ask them, what kind of favorite artists are they trying to kind of emulate, if you will. And they may give you some reference tracks to bounce off of, you follow? But what we're trying to do here, because I'm not familiar with this music, is just to see, am I in the ballpark to where we need to be? Okay, so here again, here is our mix here. Okay, so what I instantly hear, and again, this is just a point. Doesn't mean we have to do anything. The reference track, you can hear the bass guitar doesn't have the real low-end information, as much low-end information as ours does. Now, it's played a little different. It's a different type of bass. Ours is more kind of one note, let it sustain, one note, kind of let it sustain more than the reference track. But I can tell right away that that our low end is a lot more low end in our bass guitar than their low end. Now, we can change that. Now, let's listen to that again. Let me just make sure you guys hear that difference. So here is their low end. The bass guitar, I mean. Here's ours. So there's a little bit more snappy on the bass. It's more bump, 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 bump. Mars are more, they're more a little more staccato, the way the notes are played, than ours is. But again, these are just things to try to focus your ears on. So what I may want to do is I may want to say, okay, if I want to get a little closer to that, what do I do? Maybe I come up to our channel strip. Remember I did that low roll off and I actually bumped it up. Maybe I roll off a little bit more. Not that much, right? Not at 300 hertz, but maybe it's at, maybe it's at 150. Or close to 200. Which you wouldn't think in a bass guitar if you're looking at other styles of music. When's the last time you rolled off a bass guitar at 200 hertz? You probably don't, right? A lot of times you're rolling off maybe 40, 60 to get out of the way of the kick, maybe 70, and maybe you're doing a bump at 140 on a rock bass, you know, or something. But this is a much different type of a sound. So this is where understanding the fundamental frequencies and EQ and stuff is good to know, but it's not a rule. So in other words, I get lots of emails over the years through my websites and such about EQ from students who want EQ settings. What are the typical EQ settings? And I hate that, and I never give them out. I have, and I think you have in Learning to Mix. I know you do. You have an EQ frequency guide in the bonus section of the learningtomix.com website. If you haven't downloaded that, you should, where I gave you some kind of target frequencies for different instruments to kind of focus in on if you have no clue. And that's okay. But those are guidelines because everything is recorded differently. Now, this bass may not be a bass guitar. This could have just been a sample played on a MIDI controller. I have no idea. By the looks of it, it looks like it was probably played by a person. But who knows through what kind of an amp, what kind of an effect, what kind of a pedal, who knows, right? What was done to this? If we don't know, and in this case, I have no clue, all I can do is use my ears. And I usually would never roll off a bass this high. It just, you know, my go-to thing with a bass for the style of music that I work on is I know it's somewhere between 60 and 70 normally, and then I tweak it from there. But if we were using our reference track and we were saying, okay, we don't want our bass to be as muddy on the bottom, we want to let the kick drum poke through a little bit more, the way our bass drum is, our bass is recorded, we may need to roll up higher. Now you have to use your ears. So you're not using the numbers of the frequencies, okay? So just keep that in mind. This is where, when you're out of your comfort zone, you have to think a little bit differently, and you have to kind of put to the side some of the things that you've just have always done, because it doesn't always work the same from mix to mix. So now if I rolled off this bass a little higher, now let's listen to that compared to the reference. Boom, boom, boom. Listen to that bass guitar. You can hear it. It's a lot closer. So I hope that makes sense. Some of you are looking at me, I'm sure, and laughing and going, you know, Dave, what do you think? We're idiots? Some more of my experienced students. But you know what? Again, I teach these things as if you are an absolute beginner, and I know most of you are not an absolute beginner, but I don't want to leave any stone unturned. I'd rather tell you things you already know, and maybe in some of this babble, I just may say something that may spark you to think a little differently. That's all. So please, I hope nobody's insulted and think I'm talking down to you or anything. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to really tell you what I think. And then depending on who's watching this at all different experience levels, hopefully you'll get something out of this. But now our bass, even though it's played differently and we have kind of plucked sustained notes as opposed to the staccato thing, the tonality is much closer. We still have a little more low-end information, but we've made a massive change in the way that bass sounds, and it does sound a lot more closer to the reference track. Now, again, we're not just trying to copy the reference track for reference track's sake, but if you're new to using reference tracks and thinking about things in this way, some of the practicing that you can do in your future projects is try to copy the reference track. Try to get it as close to that as possible, because you'll learn a lot about frequencies and EQ and compression. You'll learn a lot that way. You'll learn how things were achieved, right? You'll learn how they got that sound on the reference track by fiddling around and trying to copy it. And then you absorb that and you use it however you wish. But having the knowledge and knowing how to get there gives you a lot more options than just fumbling around and by mistake you happen to stumble upon it. That you don't want to do. You want to eventually learn and then tuck that away for your next project as far as information goes, okay? So I might even roll that up a little bit more. That's way too much. This also brings out the fingers a little more because I don't have so much low-end information. Now if I take away this low cut, you lose the bass completely. Oops. Sometimes these pesky knobs on this plugin. So I've got that rolled off at almost 240 hertz, okay? And that sounds a lot more like their bass guitar. So now I feel like we got our bass and our drum kick kind of in the area of where we want to go. Now we still have to lay piano, synths, bass, brass, guitars, a pad, and vocals on top of this. And then in the end, we may go back and tweak this a little bit more. But again, we're building this in building blocks because we're unfamiliar with the style of music. Okay, so I hope you found this helpful. I think our bass is going in pretty good shape. We'll come back for the next section where we'll start looking at the pads called the Dream Voice, and we'll look at our pianos and our synthesizers patches, and we'll see maybe where we might be able to combine some tracks again if that's at all possible. We'll have to take a look and see. I can see already in the synth.